Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of JoyPad Podcast. Nailed it! I'm Megan, as always, and I am joined by my fellow co-hosts Tom, Pinto, and Fleming. I don't know what else to say, so Tom, what are you doing? I mean, not what are you doing. How are you doing? What are you drinking? What are you playing?
How are you doing? I am doing well. I am drinking my normal creamsicle energy drink and a cup of tea, aka leaf juice. As well as a glass of water because I'm a man of many drinks. I have been playing a couple games. First of all, my wife and I finally finished The Last of Us 2.
Ooh.
I know there was some concern voiced early on that we would have concerns, or I would have concerns about the game, but overall, I quite enjoyed it. I found that the ending was very je ne sais quoi. Unfulfilling, and I think that was by design.
Yeah.
Pinto and I had a couple of conversations about this earlier in the week. Yeah, I think it had a message, and it got that message across, and I didn't totally hate Abby by the end, even though I was still trying to blast her face off. Even when I was playing as her in the Ellie fight, I was just like trying to let her lose, because I was worried that if she won, then Ellie was going to die.
Yeah, I didn't know how that was going to go. That like final that fight was awful. It was horrible. I hated every minute of it.
The fight in the water?
Yes.
Yeah, the fight in the water, I was just like, stop killing each other. Just end it.
Fun anymore. This was never fun.
I thought it was a great game. So, will I replay it? Probably not, because misery is sad. But I did look through the kind of new game plus options and was tempted a little bit by infinite ammo, one-shot kill, and melee weapon one-hit kills and all that stuff. Because I greatly enjoyed the combat in the game.
Yeah.
I just, like, if I could just go back and play that Rattler level, like, 1,000 times with infinite ammo and one-shot kills, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I have no sympathy for any of those fools.
No. Oh, I forgot about that. I feel like you go through that area so quickly.
Incredibly quickly.
But I killed all of them. No regrets.
Oh, me too. They all had to go. I let a couple of the zombies live.
I used the zombies to kill them.
Yeah. We had one person that went down. I think their name was like Alice or something. And someone kept going, "Where's Alice?" And then I would like get that guy. Then someone else would show up and they go, "They got Alice." No one ever cared about anyone other than Alice. It was amazing. But yeah, so we started a more lighthearted game after that, and we started playing Mario Brothers Wii U Deluxe, which involves just as much murder, but in a much more comical and child-friendly fashion. So yeah, that's been fun. I also fun story involves just as much, if not more, frustration from my part when I run into levels that are difficult. But I think that's been about it. We've also been playing some more selection, but I will let my other co-hosts talk more about that, as I have already elaborated on my Last of Us 2 experience. So, Mr. Michael Fleming, why don't you tell us about what you are drinking, how you're doing, and what games you have been playing?
Well, I have my water, Sky Juice, as we call it sometimes. And I also have my unsweetened iced tea from Wendy's, unsponsored, but please do so, which is leaf juice and also delicious. And yeah, so otherwise I'm doing fine. I've been playing War Selection, as you mentioned, with you guys, a little bit on my own as well, but mostly just with you guys. Been fun. Still enjoying the game a lot. It's nice to get back to an RTS that I enjoy. And it's also not as difficult as like something like StarCraft Brood War. Trying to play that, it's so intense. Every game exhausts me. Not War Selection, fortunately. I've also been playing a lot of Planet Coaster because I like roller coasters, and that's been fun. But yeah, otherwise I've been kind of I've like looked at games and I'm like, oh, I really want to play that, but I haven't had enough motivation to sit down for hours on end and play. So like I have Baldur's Gate 3 and I want to play it and I really, really want to play it. And like I started it and did maybe 10 minutes of gameplay. And I was like, this is going to be a lot of effort. I just decided not to do it. So that's on my to-do list when I have more time, probably in the next month or so.
I can hit on one thing you said there really quick, and just having all the games and wanting to play them but not having the time.
Yeah.
I found something online recently called Steam Gauge, which will show you how much you've spent on your library of games.
Ooh.
And how many hours you've played, and it actually breaks down the cost per hour.
How does it know how much you
of the
paid
games.
versus like what the game costs at that time?
It might be able to query it from your account because you have to give
okay.
public. I don't know how much. It just uses your public profile information.
Gotcha.
So I guess Steam kind of just knows.
I mean, I hate to sound pretentious, but I don't really care about the cost because my Steam library is not that big. Really, I've probably spent no more than, let's just say $1,000, and even that I think is high. But
Sure.
in the grand scheme of a 30-something worker, it's not an insane amount of money, and that's also over the span of 16 years that I've
Right.
had it. So it's not even like it's been that much over every year. But Baldur's Gate definitely is a new game. Definitely cost $50 or $60 when I picked it up, and I'm like, I really want to play that. So yeah, I don't know if I would give my account information to a third-party vendor to find that out, but I do look at the my profile, how many hours I've played, and also like I think, like I said, Baldur's Gate 3 has like 34 minutes or something played. So it's one of those, I'm like, I'm gonna play this. It's on my to-do list. Thanksgiving and the holiday season's coming, and maybe I'll get some time off then, and I'll have more time to do it. But for now, I'd also much rather play with you guys, for example, in something like War Selection than play that. So it's been like Planet Coaster in the evenings prior, and then War Selection late at night as we can. So that's been all about me, really, though. Mr. Michael Pinto, what have you been up to? What are you drinking? A beer tonight, I hope. And what are you playing?
I have a Brace's Orchard Peach Hard Cider, same as last week, because I don't really drink except when we do this podcast. Occasionally, if I'm gaming, I'll drink, but only if I'm socially gaming. I also have water, of course. I haven't been doing much beyond working. Today is my first day off since last Thursday, of course. Gaming, all I've been really playing is War Selection. I played some Among Us last week with some friends. That was interesting and fun, and also full of chaotic energy. That
Very.
Yeah, I think that's a game, depending who you're playing with, that you can only play for short amounts of time before it'll just get to be a little too much, maybe.
Too tense, or just like, it takes too much energy to play?
There's a lot of yelling.
So it's
I guess it depends who you're playing with.
It's a game of accusations.
Yeah.
It won't end friendships. I don't think it's that far. Would you say, Pinto?
I said it has potential to be a friendship ender, but only if
Yeah.
you're taking it super seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I played Monopoly with Tom and Fleming and some of our other friends in college once, and I said
again.
never again. I was happy to lose, and I said I'm never playing Monopoly with you guys again, ever.
It wasn't us.
Excuse me, it was Mega Monopoly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
I
was
think it was
very
like
much.
Monopoly
over
Empire
10
or
years
something.
ago. And yeah, I've never played Monopoly with them again. I've played many other games with them, but not Monopoly. I recently jumped back into Spelunky today in an attempt to try to beat it so I can try out Spelunky 2, but
Nice.
I don't know if it's going to
Would it
happen.
be? You mentioned it last week, I think. Would it? You said it'd be easier if we played as a team, because I was considering picking it up and playing. Oh, I thought.
Oh, no.
I thought you said it
It'd be
wasn't.
Yeah.
harder if we played as a team, but it'd be fun.
Oh God.
It's such a difficult game.
I have it.
It's very difficult.
I've never played it. I have it.
Megan, do you have it on PC or just PlayStation?
PlayStation, but I can easily obtain it for the PC.
Very.
See,
very
that's a
cheap.
good 4-person game that maybe we should all
Yeah.
hop on together.
I'm into it.
Let's talk
Let's
about ending
get this
things.
Yeah. So that's about what I've been up to. I also jumped into Zelter. It is a zombie survival game, but it's in early access right now, and there's just not a lot to it. So
Is it
yeah,
better
I
than the
know.
Daisy
No,
standal?
it's
I was just gonna ask the same thing.
No, it's not. It's not Daisy. It just launched. It's 8-bit
Oh, wow.
or no, like 16-bit. Sorry.
Yeah, it's
So-
reminiscent of Stardew.
Yeah, it's reminiscent
really?
of Stardew, but there's no multiplayer yet. That was one of their stretch goals for their funding. I don't know if they met it or not. I'm a terrible person and did not donate to the funding, but I did buy the game in early
Then
access.
you helped.
You helped. I think so.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at. Megan, it rolls back around to
Yo.
you. What are you
Oh.
drinking? How are you feeling? What have you been playing? And what's our topic of discussion?
Yeah, we should talk about that. So I'm feeling pretty okay. It's Thump Day, which means tomorrow is Friday, and then I have the weekend to myself, hopefully. We'll see. That's debatable. I'm drinking my leaf water, as always. And as far as what I'm playing, nothing too new. Still on Fall Guys. We played Among Us. I played with Pinto over the weekend, like he discussed. I did pick up Mafia, the definitive edition. I think the
Oh, so you
original came
picked
out
up-
on PS2.
So you picked up
Bite
Among
me.
Us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, this is like an actual like mob game. I think it was originally out on the PS2 and they did like a remaster, but I think it's worse than the original. They made it look really pretty, but as far as controls and everything else, it's pretty bad. So I don't know how long I'll stick with it. It was on sale though, so I don't feel horrible about it. But yeah, nothing too new to discuss game-wise. As far as what we'll be discussing tonight, as I think a lot of you know and I've discussed, I spend a lot of money on games, on gaming things. And last weekend, I was strongly debating buying the Oculus Quest 2 because I really like VR and I have a group of friends that are all acquiring VR headsets. And VR is something I'd like to do with a lot of people rather than playing solo because it gets hard and it gets boring. But this led me into thinking about another trip down, nostalgia lane. But my favorite, like, gaming apparatuses, what's the plural? Mike, you
Apartment.
are... What's that?
Apartment.
Apartment? Okay, perfect. But it really...
Paraphernalia.
That's better. But it made me think about different things that you can get for gaming. As we were growing up, we're all in our 30s now, I think, correct? So we've seen a lot of developments in technology and different things that you could purchase or would come with games to either improve the experience or it could make it worse. So I just kind of wanted to see how you guys felt and what things you liked, or maybe there's something now that you're really into. Or maybe there's something that was released years ago and they've only improved it over time with technology. Like, for example, one thing that I loved in my first real experience with, like, a device improving a game experience was the Saturn 3D controller, which they bundled with Nights into Dreams for the Sega Saturn. I don't know if any of you gentlemen are familiar with that game, but it featured an analog stick and analog triggers, because they really, like, it was a controller they developed based on the N64 controller, because they realized the Saturn controller that they already had would make it really difficult to play the game. And it was, like, I think really my first experience with an analog an analog joystick. So...
Can we agree Saturn, like, and Genesis controllers in general were pretty bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were.
The idea of having 3 buttons side by side was just not great. But the idea of the analog joystick is great.
Yeah.
I actually remember playing a PlayStation 1 and them not having the DualShock controller yet, and then moving over to the DualShock controller setup, and they still had the button in the middle that you could press to turn analog on and off.
Yep.
And that actually would do things in certain games. And I remember, I was young enough that I was playing Croc on PS1 in front of the television while my dad was watching another TV, and I was using the D-pad to move around and stuff. My dad was like, "Why don't you use the freaking joystick? It's probably easier. Just do that." And I was a kid. I was like, "Okay," and I did. I turned it on, and I was like, "Oh, this is greatly more comfortable." It was a little bit. I mean, it took some getting used to, just because, growing up with a Super Nintendo controller, you were kind of used to that flat button mashy pad. But even now, like I said, we've been playing Super Mario, and I use the D-pad on that because that's where Mario lives in my head. Mario lives on the D-pad. All right. My fingers hurt after playing for a while. You can only hold right for so long before it freaking hurts. Throw it to the mothers of invention, the analog stick. All bow down.
Look at us now.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember the Rumble Pack?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember the Rumble Pack really well. It was a fun time when you had to buy accessories to make your controllers do things.
So many batteries.
I even
Oh
had
my God.
a control. Even before that, the controller for, oh goodness, whichever Nintendo machine, where it had the like were able to like slide over a button and make it auto press A or B or whatever. Do you guys remember that?
Turbo controllers.
Oh, yeah.
Controllers.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I remember those as well. We had one, and I would use it for like the Chrono Trigger drinking game, where you have to drink the beers and at the festival or whatever. Yeah, I used that because it would just mash the A key for you. So I would just like keep them set up right there, and I could get a lot of points then. It was very nice.
Well, I ended up using that for Metroid, actually, because Metroid to me was really hard. But if you could do this bomb jump as Samus, and if you used Turbo controller, you could basically bomb jump into infinity, and you could kind of break the game a little bit and get into like areas you weren't supposed to at a certain time. So that's the one I really remember using that for. And then on the PS1 again, Metal Gear Solid, there's the torture scene with Ocelot, where he specifically tells you not to use a Turbo controller because he'll know and he'll just torture Meryl more. But he doesn't know, and you can just use a Turbo controller to win. I think I actually
Wait,
bought a PS1.
he actually says in like the script, like, don't use a turbo controller.
Yes,
I don't remember that.
Literally does. Yep, he says, "Don't even think about using a turbo type controller because I'll know." Like his raspy
I
old
gotta
man
find
voice.
this. Hopefully it's on YouTube or something. That sounds hilarious.
It's gotta be.
Yeah.
But it was really hard for me to do with my little kid fingers. And the turbo controller got me through that.
Yeah. And then the last one that I clearly remember is, like, I feel like it's kind of gone away a lot of these accessories from my perspective. They're kind of starting to come back. But the last one that I can remember, and I think it was only for the Game Boy Color because the Game Boy was way too thick. But there was a big problem with the early Game Boys where you couldn't see the screen very well. Yeah, they weren't backlit. So on the Game Boy Color, there was like an accessory that you could like put at the top of it. It would connect to it, and it flipped down, and it had two lights on it, and it would like light up the screen more. And if I remember right, it also had it could also magnify the screen a little bit for you. And you guys are nodding your heads, so you guys remember this too, because I used to take that and plug it in, and then like put like the sheets over my head so no one could see it, and I was like play games all night, and I played Pokemon for hours and hours, and it was so wonderful.
I got news for you, my friend.
They still make this?
They did have one of them for the
It was for the
original
Game
big
Boy,
old
yeah.
gray brick.
I
I have
remember
one
the
still.
original one for the Game Boy. I remember the Game Boy Color one.
Yeah, it was big and clunky and went right over the top of it. It had the magnifying glass.
Oh man.
I had one friend that had the magnifying glass thing, and sometimes I went to daycare and we would just like trade accessories and stuff. Like some people would have a Game Gear or whatever, and you would just trade off one day. Be like, "Hey man, can I play your Game Gear? You can play with Game Boy." And just trade off. But yeah, that was kind of my experience with that. He fell asleep early at like one of the daycare sleepovers, and that light came in handy because everything was out. I was playing Game Boy at nighttime. It was great.
Yeah, that's what I had too as well. I shared a room with my brother for the first like 10-ish years of my life, something like that. So that's how I did it too.
I think we definitely come from a time where we had to buy accessories to make our gaming life better or easier.
Definitely.
What about you, Pinto? You're kind of quiet. What are your experiences?
This is probably a forgotten accessory because it was not successful and they made very few games for it. The Nintendo Super Scope for the Super Nintendo.
Oh, yeah.
the Super Nintendo rocket launcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how many games they made for that? Like 3. I have it.
There was very few.
There was the one that came with it that was like, play Tetris with a gun. And I was like, okay. And
Sure.
then Yoshi Safari, which was actually a pretty cool game, but that's all they did with it. It needed 6 AA batteries, and it drained the crap out of them super fast. And I just wish they had done more with it, because I always loved gun peripherals, though I'm not a gun user in real life. I'm like, this is fun. You know, in our arcade episode, we talked about how I was a huge fan of the House of the Dead games, because I got to shoot zombies. And I love shooting zombies in any video game, and it's more fun if you have an actual gun to do it with.
I had the one that you used to like shoot the ducks.
Yeah, the light gun. The zapper, sorry.
Yeah, the zapper. I had that. Well, my parents mostly had it because I was very young. I think they had it when I was like 4, and it feels like forever ago. But I remember being a very young child having that around the house.
I remember just to jump back a minute to the Super Scope, I didn't have one, but my friend Mark did, and I tried to borrow that, and Yoshi Safari, I think, was the game, and that thing must have broken super easy, because even with the millions of giant batteries that it took, I could not get it to work for the life of me.
Did you also
and that was just
bring the part that you had to plug into the Super Nintendo to detect the scope?
Maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
That's important.
I was young.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
But I do think like there are some accessories. Now I'm going back on like 10 years now, but I personally thought things like Guitar Hero and Rock Band with all of the accessories you had, that came in that kit were going to kind of stick around. I know I've mentioned it before, but I am surprised that it's an extra like way to make money off.
They just filed a new patent for guitar controllers.
Ooh.
Yay!
Yeah, they did.
We did it again.
Oh, we've done it again.
We did it again.
We did it again. No, but like, I mean, the way I look at it is you sell your game's $50, especially like a single player kind of game. You own it, like Last of Us, you're never going to get another thing. But if there was an accessory you needed to play that game in some way, then
I've gone through so many drum kits.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like, I mean, I remember, Pinto, you had to get that special metal foot pedal because you kept breaking the pedals of the normal Guitar Hero sets.
I got a heavy foot. What can I say?
You also were the only one to play drums most of the time.
Tom played drums.
I played I beat them just as hard.
No,
How many times did we have to solder Tom's red drum pad?
a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Quite a lot. We got it working for a while.
No, something like that. It really only had one use, just for Rock Band or Guitar Hero, and usually by the time another one came out, it was on like a next generation console. So then you had to buy a whole new set of instruments.
Yeah.
True. I mean, and they do take up a lot of space. So I kind of understand why it went to the side, but I think that there's still a certain market for it. Like, I would never go buy a drum set, but or a guitar for that matter. I especially a nice one. I just could never see myself really doing that. But I play plenty of video games. I could certainly buy something like that and not feel too bad that I spent, the bit of money those things cost.
Yeah. $100 or $200 versus, $400 plus.
Drum sets are thousands, right?
Yeah.
They're good ones.
Yep.
So
You can get one for like $500, but
It won't be great.
yeah,
it'll be okay.
It'll make noise.
Yeah.
it would make noise, definitely.
It'll be drums. Yeah, I mean, I really loved all of the music peripherals. The one I never got was the keyboard for Rock Band, which I always kind of wanted.
They had a keyboard?
I know you do.
Yeah, it came
Rock
out
Band
for Rock
4?
Band 3.
Ah, I
3.
don't remember that.
Yeah.
That was the one where they started to kind of fade out,
It is. Yes.
to be honest.
Okay.
Rock Band 2 was just so all-encompassing.
Yeah.
that I guess they didn't really need to go much further.
Yeah. Well, they're also
Or,
better
But,
in person, those kind of games.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or DJ Hero, they had the turntable
I still have that.
controller. It had like 3 buttons and you would spin it. Or Taiko Drum Master, which is my favorite. It holds a special place in my heart.
I almost bought that
I love Taiko Drum.
recently.
I still have the little drum. It's in my closet at my parents' house.
For anyone listening that doesn't really know what a taiko drum is, it's a traditional Japanese drum that's played both on the sides and on the top of the drum head with 2 heavy sticks.
Yeah.
And this game, I think we talked about it a little bit in our arcade game episode.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's the best version of it because you get the giant full-size kind of taiko drum and you get to beat the heck out of it. But yeah, home version, really nice.
Really obnoxious, but
Oh yeah.
But let me ask, so Megan, you mentioned VR, and I don't think any of us have discussed it. Like, I personally have not had, like, I sometimes people are like, hey, check this out in VR, and I'm like, okay, and I have put on a couple of VR headsets at, like, innovation expos through my work and a couple things like that, and I'm always like, this is cool, but I don't know, like, it just never seems to, like, kind of click with me. I wonder if you're, like, why are you leaning towards getting one and wanting to have that kind of experience?
So I do have the PlayStation VR for the PS4, and I've had a pretty positive experience with it. The only issue I have is I don't have a lot of friends that own them, and there is a lack of like multiplayer games, at least on the PlayStation VR itself. But just the experience for me is way different than sitting down and playing a regular console game, either alone or with friends. I think it's as far as like immersion, 10 times better. You put on that headset and you put in your earbuds or headphones, whatever, and you are in that world. Like, I'll be playing and sometimes I just start talking to things in the game, not even really thinking about it. It's a whole different experience, and I think it greatly improves, at least gaming for me.
So, like, what games in particular?
I mean, I play everything from Job Simulator, where, you're at a museum with robots and you're, it's like the setup is you're going to this museum and you get to experience jobs that humans might have done in the past. So like you are working at a convenience store or you're working in like an office and they want you to like make coffee, start your computer. And it's just stupid little things like that. It's not anything too crazy. Or even like a horror game, like Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, that's where I would think.
Yeah, that was wild. I can't remember.
They
there
put
are a few
human
others.
meat in my mouth, and I wasn't a fan.
And there
That's where I
are
stopped.
there are definite limitations, which I think maybe ruins the experience a bit for some people, just because the technology isn't there yet. Especially with like locomotion, where you're still moving in the game, but you're standing in one place, so it can cause a disconnect. It's somewhat jarring, but I think as technology advances and VR is more of a permanent staple, I think, in gaming than it has been in the past, and it's more accessible to people, that they'll improve upon it. But
It's just so much higher quality
It is.
now than it had been in the past. I mean,
think about the Virtual Boy.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? Virtual Boy was. I remember trying out a Virtual Boy at a KB Toys to date myself. Well, I guess Virtual Boy is already dating myself. But it was just so crazy to kind of see a video game in depth.
Yeah.
Even though it was nothing but a bunch of red lines and Mario playing tennis poorly. But, I mean, that kind of blew me away and really got me into VR at that time. I've only really used VR once when I used a friend's VR headset. Shout out to you, John, to play Resident Evil 7. And it was in that cinematic where someone fed the sloppy, slimy human meat directly into my mouth. And I mean, it's such a different experience doing that in VR than it is just watching it on the TV, because I actually felt like with the perspective that something was actually going to go into my mouth, and like I like took off the headset and like was like covering my mouth because I was so just thrown off by it.
Even just the element of sound, it enhances it greatly.
I definitely think that horror or exploration kind of games are much more aware this kind of thing would work. Because like I remember watching plenty of people play, for example, DayZ, which has a beautiful map, and I remember times where I'd be on top of a mountain just like looking down on the, major cities of that, like Chernigorsk or Electro, and I'd just be like, this game is actually really nice, especially as like the game Arma that it's based on. So anyone that's played the Arma franchise would understand, but the games are always like cutting edge to the point that like you can barely play that game. When Arma 3 came out, like your graphics cards had to be pretty top notch, your processor pretty top notch to get the full experience. But as they get a little bit older and the CPUs and GPUs catch up, you can kind of realize when you're playing at max settings, like this game is really good looking. So like those kind of games, if they could be displayed through VR, I can imagine would be such an awesome experience, especially for people who can't, get out into the world and experience those kind of places. Like it's cool to imagine being like, I'm, in New York City and then I'm somewhere else, like in Europe in a fraction of a second through a game. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, we're all sitting at home right now.
Yeah.
If we could have a really good like social simulator through a VR experience, I mean, that would be kind of a game
probably
changer.
Very helpful for all the mental health problems people are having right now.
I mean, I think they're even using it too for like inmates that are soon going to be released from prison, so they could see what the world is like now on the outside, where they can experience that and put on
the
a
ones
VR
that had
headset.
like 25 years inside or
Yeah.
whatever. Like they don't even know
What the heck is the internet?
Yeah, they don't even really
Well,
know
yeah,
what the
like think
internet
about an
is.
iPhone.
So one of the area that I have a problem with it is cost. I personally think I've seen them just growing in cost. Like they haven't really gotten cheaper from what I've seen, at least the ones that like actually are practical or would connect to like the PlayStation 5 or
Right.
Xbox One, those kind of systems. I do think those systems are going to drive it, but I wouldn't be surprised if like those VR headsets cost as much as like a brand new graphics card or something
Yeah.
like that, in the hundreds, if not potentially up to $1,000 cost.
I will say one thing to counter that with like the Oculus, which part of my hesitation is it's owned by Facebook, which I don't like, and you have to connect it to your Facebook profile, and if you deactivate your Facebook profile, you can no longer play your VR games,
Doesn't make sense.
which I think is stupid.
It doesn't
Thanks,
make
Yeah.
sense.
But the Quest specifically, and the Quest 2, it's a self-contained VR
Okay.
unit, so you don't even need a PC to use it. So I think it's like it's $300 for a 64 gigabyte Oculus Quest 2, and then it's like $400 for 250 or something like that. But you don't need anything other than the headset and the controllers that it comes with, which I think is not bad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not opposed to it to try it.
Oh, sure.
But I don't think it's something that like, I mean, I'm not a big console player in general.
Yeah.
So like, it would take a pretty big jump for me to get, all the necessary things to use that,
Right.
to the point of the concept of accessories, which is kind of funny because at the start of this episode I was like, oh, I've spent like $1,000, which is like nothing on my Steam library, but it's just the idea of like, oh, I'm spending that much money just to do VR games. I'm kind of like,
Right.
I don't know if
Nah.
that makes sense.
Well, it's something you're already not certain if you're gonna engage in. Whereas the Steam games, you're probably
Yeah,
gonna play at some
definitely.
point, or at least you feel like you are.
I do think at some point I'd get a PS5. It just will probably be a little while.
It's always better to get a console after its launch, because then all the games are out, and the games that were out at launch have decreased in price. But I think VR is kind of the same way, where like there's a rapid evolution of the technology right now. It hasn't come to the point, it's almost like the very, very early console wars where it's like Atari versus Intellivision and stuff like that.
For sure.
Where they're just throwing everything they can at it and, maybe a couple things will stick. I do think eventually we will get to the point where we will have either a lot of VR titles for like a PlayStation or PC that will interface with these units. And I think we just haven't quite hit that yet, but I think we're getting close to it.
It'd be really nice if you could use it between systems, so like it's more game dependent. So like if you had something like Arma 3 or whatever, you'd be able to play it among the machines. Even if you had to have the game on different places, you could use that accessory on all of the systems. That would be very helpful. If they do a PS5 exclusive VR set, it's kind of like, oh, okay, and then I have to buy another one for this and another one for that.
Right.
It just becomes too much. Just
like
personally.
the PS4 VR set?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair.
Unfortunately, a pretty expensive unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think peripherals are definitely better when they have more than just a single use. I think that's some of the trouble that we started seeing with some of the Guitar Hero and Rock Band controllers. So, like, for example, I think when we were in college, our friend Alex had Xbox and I had PlayStation. So all of my peripherals were all PlayStation based and his were Xbox based. So we couldn't share them and like use them together. And of course, a lot of that's by design. But if you have the ability and you're targeting the sort of game that encourages collaboration, it's always better if your friend's stuff will work with your stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Like, even when we talk about playing a game, it's like, well, I have it on a console, you guys have it on PC, and no one wants to really adopt crossplay too much.
Though I will say, I think we're in like an unprecedented era of crossplay. Like,
very true.
Never used to see this kind of like Fall Guys. You can play across Rocket League.
Rocket League's a big one,
across.
definitely. Yeah, well, I've seen plenty of Switch players.
Fortnite, that's the one I can think.
Yep, Fortnite's another one.
Yeah. So I think that is improving the way that that's going to work, and I could definitely see a case where VR would be adopted across platforms with units that would work on PC, Xbox, especially PC and Xbox. I mean, I think Microsoft is doing away with that whole dichotomy.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Agree with Microsoft being the one to do that.
I mean, they've even said that with their acquisition of, what is it, ZeniMax, whoever owns Bethesda now, that, they don't even really need to worry about game sales. They'll just push it all to PC.
Which is fine with me.
Yeah.
I think it's been interesting how accessories have kind of dwindled a little bit more over time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that does come from standardization and just kind of better hardware to begin with. I mean, like, like we were discussing the magnifying glass for the Game Boy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even one of my favorite things, the Super Game Boy, which for any children under the age of 20, I guess, was basically a big old cartridge you would put into your Super Nintendo that could also take a Game Boy cartridge, and then you could play your Game Boy
Slap
games
it in there.
Yep.
on a TV. Oh, so good.
That's how I played Pokemon, because I couldn't, to go back to the screen difficulty with the Game Boy, I couldn't see, so I just played it that way.
Megan, I did the exact same thing.
Oh.
It also helped alleviate my parents going, "You're gonna go blind staring at that thing all the time."
Exactly.
But so we don't really need that anymore because your Nintendo Switch can just dock and go onto the TV.
Yeah.
You don't need the light anymore because
Everything
Game
is
Boys
lit.
are backlit
Yeah.
now.
Look at memory cards. That was a huge
man.
thing. You'd have to get a memory card to save your game data, or even, I think when Donkey Kong was released, they put out that storage expansion thing that you would actually have to put into the Nintendo
Yeah.
64
On the
to play
64?
it. Yeah.
That thing was bizarre.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that for 1 minute? Just like I think it was just a memory module. Honestly, like it just had more
That's all it
RAM
was. Yeah.
for the Nintendo 64. But there were games that would not run without it. Like Perfect Dark was the number one example, because my cousin bought Perfect Dark at one point, and we used to play GoldenEye all the time and all this, and I think he got it cheap somewhere, plugged it in, we were trying to play it, and you couldn't do anything. Like, it would start up, and I think you could just like run around.
Yeah.
But you could not do anything else without that memory module.
I actually
Donkey Kong
just
64.
found my Perfect Dark copy. I'm not even kidding.
Ooh.
I just found it the other day.
Such a good game.
That was a wonderful
Such
game.
a good game.
I loved that game.
It was basically just ultimate GoldenEye.
Well,
was
when
what
I
Perfect
found out
Dark
you could
was.
have AI in that game and it would like keep track of your stats and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I could be an amazing player.
I just remember there were like nuke hand grenades in that game.
Yep.
It was the craziest thing. Yeah, the memory module was crazy. And I mean, Nintendo 64 had a lot of those kind of weird things because the Rumble packs were in that as well.
Yeah.
I think there was like a camera plug-in to the back of the controller that you could get.
There was a camera plug-in. So I think the camera plug-in came from the Game Boy Color. It was like a cartridge that you would slide in, and then they also made their version of like the Super Game Boy for the N64, where it looked like a Rumble pack. You would plug it into the controller, and you could put in your Game Boy games.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
So
of.
you could put in the camera that way.
Oh my god. Well, and then I know, Pokemon Stadium. You really needed that.
So you could
expansion for that.
transfer your Pokemon.
Your Mons.
Yeah.
I have that
and,
game
and
too.
of course, also a great game. And there was actually a similar peripheral for the GameCube too, because you could do Game Boy Advance games.
Yeah.
And Game Boy Advance controllers for Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention the best peripheral of all time that we've all been neglecting. The fishing rod controller for every system ever, made for that one fishing game that no one owned. Speaking of Perfect Dark, would go to my friend Owen's place and we'd play Perfect Dark. And if we ran out of controllers, that fishing rod controller was over there, boy. You best learn how to shoot somebody and throw that nuke hand grenade with a fishing rod. I think that's all I've got in my brain on peripherals until something else gets stirred up.
Yeah.
Don't let them stir it up.
No. I think it was a good discussion. A nice little walk down memory lane, as they say. I always appreciate when you guys indulge me on talking about things that I loved as a kid. Anyone else have anything to add? Not you, Tom. You don't get to say anything else.
I want to subtract.
I mean, the only thing I'd say is that people that are like Tom said, probably under the age of 20 are like, you had to get all these things to do just these basic things? It's like, yes, children.
Yeah.
We had to
we
do
did.
it. Be lucky. Be thankful. You're so lucky.
Everything's
It must
built
be-
in now.
Yep.
It must be way cheaper to be a gamer now.
Oh, it is, definitely.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. As always, please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Leave us a review. Give us some stars. If you leave us a review, tell us. Maybe we'll give you a shout out or something like that, or read it on the podcast. I don't know. I'm just saying things to get you to do stuff. You can follow us online at JoyPad Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us with things that you might want us to talk about, or if you have any comments, critiques, criticism, whatever, you can email us at, is it joypadpod@gmail.com?
You got it.
Ah, perfect. Very good. Am I forgetting anything else? Oh, the YouTubes. That is at
Just JoyPad.
just JoyPad on
Yep.
YouTube. You can see us playing Diablo, as well as see some other things there. But I think that about wraps it up, right? Yes? No? Maybe?
That's everything. Great job.
Cool. Tom,
Put a bow on it. Bam.
you can speak now, Tom.
Okay. All right, everyone. As my former child self would say, stay joyful.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.